welcome you here today. I'll do a little overview of the rural LISC strategy, and then we'll jump into information about our panelists. So many of you are rural LISC partners already, so this isn't new news, but we are deeply committed to rural America and providing support in diverse rural communities to make them good places to live, work, and play, and innovate. And so we do that through partnerships with over 140 rural-based partners and collaborators, oftentimes nonprofits and small businesses. And we have a footprint of over 2,200 counties in 45 states and in Puerto Rico. And our focus is to look at communities with a population of about 50,000 or below that aren't part of a metro area. And because we've discovered that those communities are most underinvested in terms of federal resources, but also local and private philanthropy. And so we're an intermediary that helps connect the dots between those resources and the communities that we work in. And here's just a map of all of the different partners we work in. The yellow shading shows all of the different parts of the country that the rural team has a footprint in. And as of 2021, the rural team has done over $5.5 billion worth of development across the country through our work. And we work through 5 different community pillars: access to capital, which is why we're here today, broadband and infrastructure, workforce development, disaster response and resilience planning, and placemaking, which includes our housing work, creative placemaking work, and a multitude of other things that make the environment for housing and economic development strong in those communities. And we do that across the board through technical assistance and capacity building support, as well as looking through a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice.
Sounds good.
Having a little bit of, my slide doesn't want to advance. Sorry about that. Here we go. And obviously we're here today to talk through some of our strategies for access to capital, thinking through how we can be innovative in the solutions that we provide, because we know that capital helps address key drivers of health, wealth, and opportunity in communities that we work in. So I'm really thrilled to share with you a great panel of experts, both on our LISC team, but also with some of the partners we work with. So today we'll be having Rachel McIntosh, who's with our National Economic Development team, share some information about our partnership with Kiva. And then Ana Maria Cintron, who is the founder and executive director of Causa Local, will share her experience as a rural LISC Kiva trustee and the work that they're doing in Puerto Rico. After they present, we'll have time for Q&A about the Kiva program. And then we'll have Vanessa, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Vanessa, so please correct me, Aguirre?
Gary.
Okay. Gary, thank you. My last name's Haskovec, so I have the same struggle. She's our small business underwriter with our LISC national team, and David Johnson, who is our business development officer with our LISC small business team. So, and then facilitating our question and answer is Tiffany Taylor Miner, who is our director of communications at Rural LISC. So welcome to all of our panelists. We are encouraging folks just to kind of keep the conversation moving. We are encouraging folks to put their Q&A in the chat throughout the presentation, and Tiffany will be monitoring those and bringing those questions up to our panelists. And just another reminder, if you're not speaking, if you could keep your microphone on mute. And with that, we will kick off the presentation. And panelists, just let me know when you need me to advance your next slide. And thank you again, everybody, for participating and for going with the flow here with our technical hiccups. We really appreciate it. I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm going to leave my camera off. I'm recording this so we can share it afterwards, and just to keep bandwidth, we'll keep moving it along. But wanted to just talk to you a little bit about the LISC Kiva Partnership. Go ahead to the next slide, Beth. We have been working with Kiva actually since 2015. And during that time, we've been able to co-invest in over 400 microloans to entrepreneurs across the United States and in Puerto Rico. And you'll hear more about that from Casa Local. And we love it because it truly is one of the only national that we know of 0% interest loan with no fee product. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So just a little bit more about what we've been able to accomplish together. Some of you on this call are a part of the team that helps to move this work together. But we've been able to co-invest in just under, but I'm hoping we're getting to 3 million here this month. 2.9 million in microloans. The average size is about $6,000. We have about 90 trustees across the network. Like I said, it was 400 loans, but also historically, we are above 65% entrepreneurs of color, over 55% are women, and running less than a 15% default rate over the course of this portfolio, which is really unheard of with microlending. One thing to know about Kiva, they really were the world's first personal microlending website. They started internationally, actually, and didn't open their US market until much later. I actually was introduced to them myself because of a gift at the holidays to co-invest in some businesses, and found the experience to just be excellent, going on anytime to invest in a business. And 2 years later I get a ding and they're like, hey, your loan paid off. Now you have 3 choices. You can co-invest in another business, you can donate your funds to Kiva to keep us going, or you can actually take the funds out. And so it's a really easy process for donors and really investors. They can do as small as a $25 gift and make a difference in these entrepreneurs' endeavors. It's really about the missing micro. As you know, it's just very difficult to support this size of lending. So what we really love about it is Kiva's really built out this backbone to be able to make loans as small as $1,000 in an impactful way. You don't have to have established credit. You don't have to collateralize it or need audited business financials, as opposed to the easy access to, other types of credit at this level is really 25 to 700% APR. So we love that about it too. Next slide. The loans can go for terms that are as long as 36 months, which typically they're usually running about 24 months. But for agricultural businesses, they do get the added boost. So they'll be looking at a longer term, and they also get a 6-month reprieve to have to start paying. Other than that, everyone does start to pay within 30 days of getting their check. So the initiative works in this way. We serve as a loan matcher, so we're raising money at the national level to be able to match these loans up to 50%. We work through trustees such as yourself, anyone on this call that's a nonprofit that is in the business of working with any businesses in your community, or if you do have other loan products, we find that this is a nice way to round out the capital access ladder to the different sizes of businesses in your community. Other communities have the city involved. Oftentimes the city is using some of their COVID relief dollars or other CDBG money to support this process. Many banks are involved in Kiva. It works very well for that particular audience as well. And then we also have trustees that can graduate to a hub. And this is when you've decided that you're going to be kind of an on the ground ombudsperson or liaison on behalf of Kiva, covering the whole region and really servicing businesses in a deeper way. And also serving other trustees, which you can hear more about later because Casa Local is both a trustee and a hub. Borrowers get to meet local lenders through this process, but they also get an incredible access to investment from across the country and sometimes even internationally. We see like more than 50% of those co-investing in these microloans are not from the community. So it really gives them access to people who are excited about co-investing with entrepreneurs. So it's a really great way for them to grow the base of folks who can invest in their lending. And then people can also become donors. Yes, sorry. Yeah, so basically how we work it is we're matching loan amounts 1-to-1 up to 50%. So they do crowdfund on the Kiva platform. Like this is an example of a $5,000 loan. They would crowdfund 2,500 of that, and we would match 2,500 of that out of our match pool. Oops. No, that's fine. Yeah. So these are, again, just kind of the 3 different roles you can play. Trustees provide technical assistance and support borrower campaigns. The hubs support, whole regions supporting the trustees and the borrowers. And then funders help underwrite both the infrastructure for this product and serve as matching investors, which is what LISC's role is. We're a match funder. I should say you too can raise your own local match pools as well. So you certainly could play all 3 roles at any time. So one of the things, I'm going to start from the bottom here. We think the benefits of being a trustee is that obviously you're bringing investment into your community. They give you the ability to track your impact over time. You get a landing page on the Kiva website. You can increase your exposure as an organization, not only on the Kiva website, but also, as a part of the LISC network, we're frequently tagging you on social media, writing up case studies, or doing spotlights of the work that you're doing as a trustee, and also building your own local networks, whether it be with other trustees or other hubs, which are really great for navigating small businesses across the city or your region to other support organizations that might be beneficial to them, whether it's, getting that next loan up, getting a particular mentor for the type of business that they are. And then, like I mentioned, really gaining access to co-investors that are outside of your community. Part of what you do as a trustee is kind of these 4 roles. You help to identify the entrepreneurs, you evaluate them. So you go in and you vouch for them. You endorse the campaign, which would turn on our match. This helps to support expectations for the borrowers. Many trustees work with them ahead of time on the application, just supporting what it takes to get through that, especially if there are any language barriers as well. You do have to submit in English, and their crowdfunding platform is in English. And then monitoring. You have no financial or legal liability for any endorsements that you make. But you will be able to monitor how well they're doing. You'll know if they fall behind. You'll be included in emails to the borrowers, and the repayment rates will be tracked. There is kind of phases for Kiva. They kind of step in over time. They go up to 15,000 now. If you're a brand new startup, you won't be able to qualify for the first one. You wouldn't be able to qualify for the first 15,000. They won't go up that high, but you can get pretty high on that first one. It's really making sure that you aren't already overburdened with debt. You have a separate bank account set up for your business, and you have government issued business proof, either at the local, state, or federal level. You don't have to be fully incorporated to participate. You do have a private fundraising period, but we find them to be pretty doable. So you do have to, for when your campaign first opens, if you're in the, these different brackets, you'll have to find, 5 to 15 lenders, co-lenders. And again, the smallest amount is $25, but you need to bring in a few co-investors to kick off your campaign. And then it's opened up on Kiva's larger campaign platform, like I said, for anyone else to co-invest. And they do help push these out, which is a really nice piece. And that might be my transition to Anna Maria to go a little bit deeper on this. So handing it over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for Beth, for LISC, for inviting us, for always supporting us. We started this a couple of years ago as a volunteer project. I used to be an auditor at Deloitte, so I kind of like transitioned into the nonprofit world, and it's been amazing, and it's been a wild ride ever since. And basically, we, as Beth mentioned, we were first trustee, and then we became a hub, and we're still also a trustee. And it's been a challenge, in the sense that Kiva is amazing, and like like in the United States, in Puerto Rico, there's nothing like it. Right now, that's like the only option small business owners have to have access to capital, to create credit, and to be bankable. And I say this in a very general term, right? Because we want our small business owners to be able to start and then be able to continue to grow. So it's amazing when I hear about all these grants and all these programs, right? But I always say it's so important that they at least start with Kiva, you know, because they can create credit, they open their own commercial bank account, and they start in that process of starting to be able to then access other financial and traditional and non-traditional products. So that's, I would say that's our end goal. We, as I mentioned, we started as a volunteer project and then we grew, and with the help of LISC, you know, we've been able to restructure and found Causa Local, and we've been able to grow exponentially in the past 2 years. I became full-time last year, and you know, we're almost hitting the 275 Kiva mark, and you know, we've been working with all these small business owners, and we're very excited to be able to deploy more than $2 million through Kiva in Puerto Rico, and then support these small business owners to continue to grow. So, you know, just it's been an amazing and wild ride, and I do want to share our, you know, our lessons and the things we have learned. So the first thing I would say is we, you know, at first it's a challenge for small business owners, at least here in Puerto Rico, to get comfortable with Kiva and be familiar with them, right? And with everything that the process per se. So at first, we're focused on creating relationships and doing that outreach that is so important. We can send an email and nothing's going to happen, but we visit small business owners and we talk to them, and they're so welcoming and so open to receiving support and help. And, you know, and they're really grateful for the help they receive throughout the process. And I call it, you know, a direct hand holding, in the sense that, you know, you meet them, they will tell you, yes, we're going to complete the application, but it's so important that follow up, the support, because right now it's very difficult for many reasons, especially also, you know, here in Puerto Rico. Right now, for example, we had an event in 2 hours and we had to cancel it because 80% of the island has no power. So, and the small business owners are dealing with that. So, you know, that outreach, that support, that time that demonstrates to them that you care. It's one of the reasons we've been able to impact almost 275 small business owners in Puerto Rico. So that also brings me to different types of communication channels, especially what are, you know, understand in your community, what are small business owners listening to? Here we do a lot of Instagram lives, and we invite other small business owners to talk about their experience, to talk about how they've done Kiva and how Kiva has helped them grow substantially and has given them an opportunity to create credit. We've also, you know, focused on education, all types of, in all languages, Spanish, English, and other languages as well. So they feel comfortable completing that application, and they understand what they're getting themselves into. And one of the things I do love about Kiva is that, you know, they incorporate character, right? And I think that's very important, because at the end of the day, we not only want to create relationships with these small business owners and facilitate access to capital, but we want to create a community. We want to do more, and you can do more when you know, you have a great team and you count with small business owners that care. So for us here in Puerto Rico, that is also very important, and we do evaluate character, and I think we're so strong with that topic, and I think that's one of the reasons we have a really good repayment rate. And it has been a challenge, like I mentioned. You know, this started with 0, and then all of a sudden it grew. And not only because of the small business owners, but because we have also had to get all the resources, and you know, and time is money, and visiting all small business owners around the island is very time consuming, but it's totally worth it, because that's, you know, that's how we've been able to do that outreach. we're very happy to be working with a great pipeline, of which 65% is women. And this is for us, something very important, because especially in Puerto Rico, there are a lot of women that they feel they can't be small business owners, or they can't be sustainable. So it's also in line with that message we want to take out, and it's all inclusive. All types of communities that are underserved will have the ability to have access to capital, and they should, right? Why not? I mean, great things are happening in the sense when these people and all types of underserved communities have access to capital. I feel like something is beeping. I have no idea, but if someone can, if you're not talking, please mute. So everybody can hear me. I hope so. And if not, you can always ask questions in the chat. And something that it's been, I was just talking about the metrics. So, we've worked with a lot of women, and we're very passionate about that. And then we're also, just working with all typical, all underserved communities in Puerto Rico that don't have the access to different resources, especially in rural areas outside of the metropolitan area. And the last things I'm going to mention is that it's so important that small business owners understand the uses. It's super, super important that Kiva, that small business owners understand that what Kiva is used for. Many of them do not understand. So, for example, when we reach out to them, right? Thank you. When we reach out to them, we're like, that if we're in hurricane season right now in Puerto Rico, so why don't you do Kiva for an emergency cash relief loan, right? So if a hurricane comes, you're not bitten by surprise, and you have a cash flow to continue the operations. Also, why don't you do Kiva to grow your payroll, cash flow, working capital? And we emphasize it a lot because a lot of people think that they can't apply Kiva to buy equipment or to hire additional help or pay for services. So, it all comes back to the education part. The reason I chose this background is because it always shows our diversity. We're very diverse. And that's what I love about our program and our organization. Not only are we inclusive within the team, but we're also inclusive with forming a community filled with small business owners that have had the chance to have access to capital and can continue to grow in the island and do great things. And for now, that's my message. I am looking forward to your questions. We're very thankful to LISC and very excited to continue to grow. Lots of people are asking me what's our next move. And we're growing with the small business owners, and hopefully, they will grow. They will need more access to capital, and we will need more financial resources to offer them as well.
Great. Thank you, Anna Maria. This is Tiffany Taylor Miner. Sorry for joining us just a little late.
Oh, no worries.
We had some questions that were pulled together before this part of the call started. And some of that had to do with being a Kiva trustee. But I wanted to really circle back to that moment that you were talking about the borrowers and the character and how the businesses are growing. Is there a particular business that comes to mind that had some success with the program that you worked with early on?
Yes, I think one of our success stories when we started was the Molcajete brothers. There were three engineers that, left their full-time jobs to dedicate themselves to produce different types of Mexican food. And they started with nothing, and now they have a company. And they literally when they called me, they had nothing. They just had their idea, recipes, and the willingness and ability and energy to apply for Kiva and continue to grow. So that's one of the success stories that come to mind. They have gone from like 0 to 100, you know, they're already exporting. And, you know, that's what inspires me to do what we do every single day and continue to work hard, because those are the stories we really, really want, you know, to support, to help, and to lead and put out there as an example. So you can look them up. They're called the Molcajete Food Company, and they have a fabrica. I forgot the word in English, but they have a fabrica, you know, a company that produces all the things they sell. And then their story is amazing. They were inspired by their Mexican grandmother. They're half Mexican, half Puerto Rican. They live here in Puerto Rico, and they're three amazing brothers. All of them are engineers. So that's one of the success stories. And like that, I have many others as well, that inspires us every day.
That's awesome and super rewarding, I'm sure.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the benefits of becoming a Kiva trustee through LISC?
Of course. Well, to be totally honest, when we started in Puerto Rico, we were nobody. So LISC helped us with their branding and their resources and their support, and we were able to get access to other grants and other resources. So honestly, that was like very important for us. Like I mentioned, this, you know, we started this from scratch, and sometimes in Puerto Rico, it's very hard to start something if people don't know you or you know, or don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, I'm always very grateful for the resources and the opportunities and the visibility that they gave us initially and that they continue to give us. And in that sense, that if you had any questions, you know, it's always a support of somebody that's there looking out.
Got it. And one more question before we move on with the rest of the presentation. And I'm not sure if this is in your wheelhouse, but how much time is usually spent, or just in your wheelhouse, how much time is usually spent with each borrower to prepare for a loan?
Well, usually, you know, for us to prepare them for Kiva, average, I would say 8 hours. But as a whole, because we also give them other services so they can continue to grow, I would say like 24 hours per small business owner.
Got it. So it's a good investment.
Yes, it is an investment, but that's one of the reasons I like it, because you know that the small business owner that is willing to do Kiva and get a loan is really into it. So it's kind of like a filter for us as well.
Understood. I see another question in the chat. Do multiple trustees match an individual loan after the crowdfunding by the client? Can anyone pick that one up?
It's per, you know, per trustee, so it's not multiple trustees at the same time. So you know, when you're fundraising a loan, you have one trustee and they endorse you, and they, you know, the match is through that trustee. So it would be just one, up to the loan amount that you applied for and they approved.
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. We want to continue with the presentation, and again, if anyone has questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat.
Thank you.
Hey there, Beth, should I go ahead and jump in and start on the small business lending side? Hearing no objections.
I think you got the green light.
All right. Perfect. Hey, everyone. My name is David. I'm part of the small business lending team here at LISC. I'm also joined by my colleague, Vanessa Aguirre, who helps lead up our small business underwriting here at LISC, and really excited to talk to you today and kind of finish up some of the presentation and do a Q&A after on our portion as well. So we'll go kind of quickly through some of these just for the sake of time, and really get into, we have a product grid towards the end, and hopefully can kind of talk pretty specifically. That's why I'm joined by Vanessa today, who's the expert with all of that, to really dive into our products and kind of what we look at from an underwriting perspective to make sure we can be a good fit as a lender for small businesses, and if not, kind of some of the different things that we're looking at, or how we try to be a resource, even if we're not an immediate fit. So with this page and with the ones following, and to talk a little bit more generally about that, the lending we do here at LISC for small businesses usually starts with businesses that have been in operation for at least 2 years, and with revenue sizes usually at $100,000 or so as a minimum, and likewise that is kind of a minimum loan size for us. From a mission perspective, as you're seeing here, and you can go ahead and even skip to the next page if possible. From a mission perspective, we're really focused on working with any small business that's not yet able to still access those traditional forms of lending, which is, we know, can be for a long list of reasons. For personal credit, maybe if it's not at a very specific level that might be needed by a more traditional bank, time in business, some of the factors that we'll get into more in depth towards the end of the presentation. We, again, want to see if we're a good resource in the space we're at. I've, just as a side note, had so many great experiences with Kiva in my past. Have also worked in more micro lending situations. So for businesses that are kind of looking for financing at those levels below 100,000, based on time in business, whatever the need is, we really rely on our partners that focus in that space, and programs like Kiva. And then again, for the small business lending at LISC, hopefully taking on that next rung of financing and kind of the next level. So some of the other things that we're really focused on is doing mission-based loans. So really diving into business plans and making sure good quality jobs with good wages and benefits and other areas of community development are hopefully a focus of the small business and opportunity as well. You can go ahead and go to the next slide with that too, or even the one after, I think. So some of the examples will, thank you, perfect, start to come in to put some faces and examples to the picture here. But one that jumped out is called Young's Popcorn Heaven in Peoria, Illinois. So it was a loan for a business that had been leasing space and was looking to acquire their own. And that is a pretty traditional loan product here at LISC, is somebody that, again, maybe has been leasing out of their own space and has an opportunity to purchase that one or other acquisition opportunities. And we'll get into this in more in-depth ways, hopefully, as well here in a minute. But one main factor that we can look at there is the amount of cash on hand that might be needed for that small business owner. So again, at a bank or a more traditional level, it might have to be a pretty specific number where a business might need 20 or 30% of the loan size in cash on hand to be able to bring into the deal, versus a barometer for us at LISC is 5 to 10%. So we'll get into the tax returns and some of the other documents we look at. We still want to make sure they're responsible loans that we're doing a full cash flow review on, that might look similar to more traditional reviews in some of those initial ways. But then again, hopefully having that increased level of flexibility for some of the other factors that might be traditional barriers for a business to be able to have that business acquisition or really take on their next opportunity. This one, and I will go quickly through some of these too, but in Puerto Rico is an opportunity to purchase a specific piece of equipment, which, so acquisition, equipment, working capital, we'll really dive into that here hopefully too, and answer any questions in those different ways. But we are able to lend in all those different capacities. And if you don't mind going, I believe there's one more example, which kind of a similar one, daycare and learning center in Chicago, where that was one where the business had been leasing their own space and was able to purchase the space they were operating out of. So kind of building those pathways to ownership is really important to our small business lending from a mission perspective. And thank you. I think maybe the next one right after that too, we'll start to show some of the, this one is a little bit more general too, where really we are trying to put together a global cash flow. So both on the personal and business level, we still, again, will ask for some of the similar things. We'll look at credit, even though maybe personal credit doesn't have to be at that specific 750, whatever a bank level might need to be. It is still something that we review. We want to make sure we understand the history and backstory on anything going on. If there's tax liens as an example, maybe making sure those are on payment plans. Bankruptcies is another big barrier for a more traditional loan where it doesn't have to be kind of a set period of having at least 5 to 10 years. But if it is something more recent, just again, wanting to make sure that everything is in place. And if we are extending a loan, that it's the right time to do so. I think we could probably go to the next slide on that too. That's just kind of speaking generally, and this one does get into some of the more specific products. So again, here at LISC, we are able to hopefully look at all these different opportunities from a lending perspective. To start with working capital, a lot of the lending we do there, just to set realistic expectations, hopefully for small businesses, is pretty specific to if a business would have a contract or a purchase order or some kind of specific opportunity that we could gear a working capital loan towards. What we don't do a whole lot of that a more traditional lender might is just a pretty general kind of business line of credit without necessarily a spelled out list of uses on the working capital side. Again, it might be for payroll or marketing or whatever that working capital need is, but it is usually pretty specific, again, to an opportunity, a growth opportunity of some kind. The acquisition and leasehold improvements is another one. So we talked a little bit about the acquisition piece, which again is really something we jump into with the cash on hand and loan to value ratios that we look at of wanting to see at least 5 to 10% in terms of cash on hand, just as a buffer in case projects run over, especially right now with the cost of construction and everything else, that they want to make sure that there's something there, but not necessarily a number that could be burdensome. So that can be for an acquisition, but also leasehold improvements. So if it's still not a situation that would call for the business to be acquiring a space, if they just want to improve the space that they're leasing, we do a lot in that area. And the amount listed there, the 100 to 500,000, is an area of focus for the team that Vanessa and I are on. Just so you know too, and I think over on the very far right under commercial real estate loans, it does list. We're certainly able to look at areas past that 500,000 as well, especially again if it's an acquisition that might be larger than that level. The interest rates may be something important to note there. So we put starting at 5%, and really just from, again, a mission perspective, if a business is ever able to access those more traditional forms of financing, that is certainly something that we do encourage from the start. So usually from an interest rate perspective, we price ourselves about a point or so higher than what those more traditional loans usually come in at. There are some special programs that LISC, being a nonprofit, we're able to access, and especially for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, LGBTQ+ owned businesses, that might draw that interest rate down further and be something that's more comparable to a traditional small business loan at a bank. But usually, again, we're about a point higher, and try to explain that to the small business too, that that's kind of the general path. Working with micro lenders, working with lenders like LISC at those larger loan sizes, and then hopefully at whatever point being able to access those more traditional loans if they become available. And then the terms and everything you'll see there too. So the interest rate was the one that I kind of wanted to focus on for those reasons though. So I think if it's okay, we can go to the next slide with that too. And I'll quickly go through this, but myself, my role at LISC here is kind of on the front end. So in collecting the documentation and working with Beth in that way on the front end, and having the conversations initially with the borrower to help determine all these things, kind of see where they're at and see if we are a good direct fit. If we're not, and if we can recommend other resources, then that is a big part of it too. And if we are, these are some of the documents that we usually look at. So this will be a good one to maybe save and come back to, and we're happy to send this out over email too. But these are the types of initial documents that we're looking at if it's going through our underwriting process. So tax returns, year-to-date financials, and other things that, again, might look similar to a traditional bank loan review. Perfect. And at this point, I've done enough rambling through all that. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Vanessa, to talk about some of these more specific underwriting criteria.
Thank you, David. Great job explaining what lending consists of and what we're looking for there. And just really quickly, we just want to go over what kind of criteria we're looking for when we're evaluating a business that does need a loan. Time in business should be at least 2 years with a minimum revenue of 100,000. We do look at the cash flow available to support the loan on a global basis, meaning we look at the business cash flow in combination with the personal cash flow. And then we preferably want a equity injection of about 10%. There are instances where we are willing to work with 5% if that's something that we can do. Credit scores for the owners of the business should be around 650. And like David mentioned, the interest rates are sometimes blended down a little bit if there are special programs available for the business. Can you move on to the next slide? Want to leave time for questions, but all of this information will be sent to you via email. But those are pretty much the biggest factors we look at when we're reviewing businesses. I do see a question in the chat about grants. There are instances where we can include grant funds in with a loan if it's needed. But that is really depending on what grant funds are available at the time of application. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so this just goes a little bit deeper into what the criteria is for loans, but we're going to share all this with you. I want to make sure we leave enough time for questions because we only have about 5 minutes here.
While we're waiting for more questions to come in the chat, can you generally speak to the average time it takes to get a deal through and who makes the final decisions about loans?
We aim for 60-day turnaround from application to closing. So when someone applies for a loan, it goes through our intake committee first to just make sure that it's something that makes sense for that business and it's something that LISC is able to do as well. And then it goes to final approval, which is a different committee. And then it will move on to our closers. So we're shooting for 60 days from application to closing.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, if no other questions come up now, this is our contact information here for Vanessa and myself. And again, even more so for me on that front end, happy to field any questions going forward and speak to any business owners that through your respective organizations that you're in contact with to help talk through that process. Again, even if we're not that immediate fit, and hopefully that's a really quick overview in cases where we potentially could be, but if we're not, just happy to kind of be a resource in any way and talk through those scenarios as they come up.
Yep, and I think that the resources in the slide deck that really break it down by time in business and the different pockets of resources is quite helpful. So as we wrap it up, I'm going to throw it back over to Beth to close us out, but we certainly thank our panelists. Beth, are you, there you are.
I'm back, thank you. Thanks everybody again for joining. I just wanted to share a couple more resources that we have access to. So in terms of access to capital, so we do have an affiliate name called Amito, and I'll put the website in the chat that does SBA lending as well. And we're also helping coordinate something called the SOAR Fund, the Southern Opportunity and Resilience Fund. There are several states in the South that where business owners can apply, and those are a little lower than that $100,000 threshold that LISC typically offers. We do manage the fund. There are several CDFI partners in the South. that are processing those microloans. So I'll share those 2 links as well. And then we also have a new market tax credits affiliate for larger commercial real estate deals or real estate deals that have a commercial component to them. So those are resources we'll definitely continue to share out in the ways that we communicate about access to capital, and also have future presentations on with our rural LISC partners. So thank you again to all of our presenters. And if there are no closing questions, let me just add those 2 other resources in the chat. We are recording the presentation. So we will be emailing that out along with the slide deck. And I can include those other resources as well. I guess the last thing I'll add is that we also want to hear from our partners on, where are there other gaps or opportunities that we can be creative in terms of addressing solutions to access to capital, and potentially come up with some new products or solutions that do that. So one example, that's really relevant now, and one of the reasons that our VP could not join us today on this call was that she's in New Orleans, and obviously they've been impacted by the hurricanes, our partners in Puerto Rico as well. So helping to provide some loan products that address disaster recovery and resilience for small businesses, things like that. So we're happy to continue the conversation, utilize the resources we have available now, and work with you to understand what other opportunities there are in the future to partner. So thank you again. And as Tiffany mentioned, we will post this session on the Rural LISC website, lisc.org/rural. And have a great evening, everybody.